Welcome back. You're watching RNN's continuing coverage of the impeachment trial of President Donald Trump. I'm Andrew Whitman. I'm joined by Roland Riopelle, and I'm also joined by Rick Unger as we analyze the vote that just happened a short time ago. The Senate declining to allow witnesses to be heard during this trial. They have spent the last hour or so in caucuses as they try to negotiate the schedule for what happens now. And according to multiple reports, what we thought would play out appears to be what they seem to be negotiating. And let's run through what that is, where they'll spend the rest of today going through these votes. We already had the vote on witnesses. There could be additional motions that come from Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. But if they hold to the schedule that they're debating, then the Senate would go dark tomorrow and Sunday. On Monday, they would be back in business with closing arguments, 3 hours per side. And then everybody will scurry home to watch the results of the Iowa caucus, which happens on Monday as well. Tuesday appears to be the day that they want to have senators weigh in, explain their votes, and give them 10 minutes each to speak. Senators, of course, have been under a gag rule in the Senate chamber since this trial started. Every day begins with the Sergeant-at-Arms threatening them under the penalty of incarceration if they wind up talking during the trial. And then, of course, Tuesday night is the State of the Union address, and we understand that right now they're looking at Wednesday about 4 o'clock as the formal end to the trial, and will likely be the day and the time that they vote to acquit President Donald Trump on the 2 articles of impeachment. We continue our analysis as we wait for the Senate session to resume. Our phone lines remain open, and we do want to hear from you. We'll keep flashing the number on the screen, and we'll go to our callers as the day goes on or as the evening goes on. But there was another topic in this trial that we'll be talking about for some time, and I'm not sure if this trial was a plus or a minus for Joe Biden. It certainly seems as though this White House is particularly afraid of running against Joe Biden and has gone out of their way to target him especially. However, all these repeated comments about him being corrupt or him having done something untoward or with his son, and here you see one of the reasons why the White House might be so afraid of Joe Biden, because the numbers have consistently shown in national polls that Biden beats Donald Trump, and Biden, of course, is running either first or second in the Democratic polls as we careen towards Iowa on Monday. But Hunter Biden's name has been dragged through the mud and is seen as somehow being corrupt, even though there's no evidence of it. Same thing with Joe Biden. But again, you hear it enough, and lower information voters may begin to believe it. And I'll also throw in the fact that he could have come forward and said, I'll testify. I'll come forward if this shakes the tree for other witnesses to come forward. If we can get John Bolton and Mick Mulvaney and Mike Pompeo, I'll come in and testify and tell you guys who are making accusations about me what for on the Senate floor. Rick, I don't know what to make of this for Joe Biden. I don't know if he's damaged now and how voters in the Democratic primaries should process this.
It is tragically unfair because anybody who has really studied this story knows that this is simply not true, what they are accusing him of. And I'll just say this for our viewers. Go to the Washington Post, today's Washington Post, and read the story by Greg Sargent because it'll blow your mind. That's something you should do to understand this. You brought something up that I think is really important. I think Joe Biden made a very serious mistake. He should have been offering to testify. He would have had such an unbelievable audience that he could have set this whole thing straight. I think he made a very big mistake by saying that he wouldn't testify. He should have been saying, come on, bring it, please. Call me in.
Greg's exactly right, in my view.
If I were Greg, that would mean something.
Oh, sorry. Rick is exactly. I got stuck on Greg because of the Washington Post. But Rick's exactly right. Joe Biden should have stood up and said, "Tell me when and where. I'm ready to testify. I've got nothing to hide. Let me testify. Please let me testify." Because the Republicans would have said, "No way. No way. We don't want to hear from you."
He was scared that you know what out of him.
Yeah, and then he's got another great piece to run in an ad in November.
But I can see his
100%
advisors
Rick.
telling Biden, boy, Republicans are going to throw every unfair question you can imagine at you.
What better
Let 'em
opportunity
do
to
it.
answer them?
Yeah, well, let them do it. And then, that probably buoys you in the Democratic primary, frankly.
Normally, no matter who the politician is or what side of the aisle they're coming from, I can always understand them being afraid to testify because somewhere in what they're saying, they're lying.
Right.
In this case, I am so confident that Joe Biden has been truthful about this and the other side has lied. Throw all the questions you want at me.
Yeah.
I need to interrupt this briefly. We'll return to this conversation in just a second. Two little bits of news to report. One is that we expect the Senate to gavel back into session just after 7 o'clock and go through roll call votes on some of these motions, which will include the schedule going forward. As we wait that 9 minutes or so for that to happen, we're still getting reaction from different senators after the vote, again, mostly along party lines, to reject witnesses and essentially bring this trial to an end. We're just waiting for the moment and the schedule that tells us exactly when that end will be. One of the senators we've just heard from is Chuck Schumer. He is the Senate Minority Leader. He's the top Democrat in the Senate. He is not happy with the vote that just happened in the Senate.
To not allow a witness, a document, no witnesses, no documents in an impeachment trial is a perfidy. It's a grand tragedy, one of the worst tragedies that the Senate has ever overcome. America will remember this day, unfortunately, where the Senate did not live up to its responsibilities, where the Senate turned away from truth and went along with a sham trial. If the president is acquitted with no witnesses, no documents, the acquittal will have no value because Americans will know that this trial was not a real trial. It had no witnesses, no documents. It is a tragedy on a very large scale.
He's making both a legal point and a political point there. What a great panel I have for this. Roland, let's start with the legal. No witnesses, no documents. Schumer's livid. I assume if you were in his role, you would be too.
Yeah, that's exactly the right reaction to this, particularly when there are so many witnesses available who do have knowledge and could give us more. Why not call them?
And the difference between what the public would expect in a trial setting from all the years of watching Law and Order, all the years of watching movies, compared to what they got, that's a pretty big gulf, and I can see a lot of voters out there being very disappointed in this process.
Yes, and they should be. And they should be disappointed in those who controlled it, namely the Republican majority in the Senate. They should be disappointed in them and should take it out on them at the ballot box. And that's what the Democrats have to hope for.
So, Rick, how do you convert Schumer's anger into motivational anger for Democrats out there?
It depends. I continue, and I'm not big on conspiracy theories, not really my thing. There is more to why they were so against witnesses. Look, the two witnesses we're aware of are Bolton and Lev Parnas. We got a pretty good sense of what's coming from them. So that, I just don't believe that is what they were so freaked out about. They know we're going to hear it from Bolton in just a couple of weeks with the book, and Lev Parnas isn't going away. That judge is going to give him permission to keep releasing more stuff. There is more to this than that. It could be the Cipollone thing I talked about earlier. I think he's now in big trouble with the Bar Association because now we learn through what Bolton, or what the Times reports, that he was in one of those meetings. That makes him a witness, and the conflicted witness at that to his role. There's something more to this. I don't know what it is, but we're going to find out.
Is that your read, Roland?
Yeah, they're hiding something. And I don't know exactly what it is. It could be something out of the OMB, Mick Mulvaney's office. We don't have a complete documentary record from there. There may be emails from the White House early on holding up the aid to the Ukraine. We don't know, but there's probably a whole lot more that will come out over time.
There's more to this. There just is.
One of the big questions we've heard in the last couple of days, and this came from some questions from senators, was When did the president first order the hold in the Ukraine aid?
Appears to be March or May.
That should be the kind of thing that there'd be a concrete answer to.
Yes, and there probably is some kind of documentary record that will show that it was happening in May when it seems to have been happening, and that could be very damaging. We'll see.
And the sense maybe that this was in the planning stages for quite some time, that he knew before there was a change in the government in Ukraine.
It's been in the planning stages ever since Rudy convinced Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, that the Ukrainians were up to something. And, you know, that's going to be an interesting part of this story, too, because what you come to find out, and it should shock nobody, Rudy was using this whole connection to Ukraine and the government there for his other clients. Maybe he wasn't getting paid by Trump, but man, he was getting paid. He was getting paid. There is so much more to these connections. And the good news is, I know a lot of journalists, they ain't stopping.
One of the things that we've heard Giuliani say, Roland, is that he started in Ukraine with the Mueller report, trying to get to the bottom and just defending his client throughout all this, trying to find dirt that would show a reasonable cause for him to be in there. Has he, to your mind, justified his actions in Ukraine?
Not at all. Not at all. And
that was the easy question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And Rick's exactly right. There's already, tidbits of evidence that show that Lev Parnas and Furness were trying to take over the gas industry in the Ukraine, and Rudy was helping him, and he was going to get a piece of that action. And and the Southern District's another one that's not going to stop anytime soon either. And, I think that he may get charged before it's all over.
The Senate has, in the last couple of hours, by a 51-49 vote, decided not to include witnesses in the impeachment trial of President Donald Trump. This means that they are now ending the eyeing the end game, pardon me, for this trial, trying to figure out the schedule and when they're actually going to bring this to a close with a vote that we now expect will acquit the president. We're going to take a quick break. We expect more action from the Senate floor right after this. Stay with us as our coverage continues.